What the actual remains would have looked like 1,000 years ago.
Archaeological digs in the 1960s uncovered this bronze ring-headed pin, as well as butternuts, which helped crack the mystery of the Nordic colony of Vinland.
Butternuts grow in northern New Brunswick, which is the same place where they would have been able to find grapes. So we think that L'Anse Meadows is a gateway to Vinland, whereby they built their base camp, but they also explored further south, where they would have been able to harvest the timber, grapes, and butternuts. So Vinland is a region as opposed to one small place on the map.
At a nearby replica settlement called Norstead, costumed guides really take you back in time.
My name is Egil Kveld Ulf. Egil the Evening Wolf. With a face like this, you can see why, can't you?
I'm making cups or bowls. It's made of it's birch wood.
This is capelin. It's been salted and dried.
The Vikings did not live in a lot of comfort, and 1,000 years later, railway passengers sometimes had to bunk down at the station. But for today's traveler, there are places like Strawberry Hill. Beyond the barren mounds at L'Anse Meadows, you may meet a baby berg near the shore at Iceberg Alley.
Bon voyage.
Icebergs come in sizes. A bergy bit is like a small car. A growler like this one is smaller, about the size of a grand piano.
Okay, now that we've seen the calf, we'll go see the mother. So one day you can come around a corner and all of a sudden there's this massive berg there. Someone referred to them one time as vast cathedrals of ice. And they look different every day because they're rolling over, they're breaking apart. They've got colors in them. You get the light behind them and you see that almost like wintergreen or bright blue coming through them.
It's hard to imagine that this impressive mountain of fresh water is just one small chunk off the massive glaciers from Greenland and the Arctic. From a kayak, it's possible to explore the iceberg from almost every angle. But because they can be somewhat unstable, it's wise to keep your distance. Imagine what you see is only 1/10 of what's beneath the surface. And imagine what it would have been like for sailors trying to navigate through icebergs, islands, and the rocky shores of Newfoundland.
The lighthouse itself was opened in the 1860s, and it's been staffed since then. The present house was built in 1922, the main inn. This is a great spot for icebergs, and this is the tip of what they call Iceberg Alley. It's where all the icebergs come down the coast of Labrador and then spread out along the north and east coast of Newfoundland, and we're at the top of that. So the icebergs stay here long into the season.
For another uniquely Newfoundland experience, try Jig's Dinner.
It's a rough food meal. It's very filling, but it's tasty. It's a meal that all Newfoundlanders grew up with, right? The main day for it being served was on Sunday, and today is Sunday, so you've hit on the right day to have a Newfoundland dinner.
Carrots, cabbage, potatoes, salted beef, it all goes into one pot and boils up together. And another crucial ingredient is peas pudding. No trip to Newfoundland is complete without a fresh seafood dinner. Start with some tender cod tongues, then lobster fixed in many ways, from stew to spring rolls, not to mention the old favorite, boiled lobster with lemon butter for dipping. Newfoundland is covered with wild berries, so it's not surprising they pop up in many different dishes.
Yeah, there's a local berry, and it's a delicacy. You only find it in certain kinds of bogs. Locally, it's called bake apples. It has nothing to do with apples and nothing to do with being baked. I don't know where the name came from. It looks more almost like a brown raspberry more than anything else. In other areas, it's known as a cloudberry, and from that, you make a liqueur.
Some of the trains that used to take Newfoundlanders to their best berry picking spots can be seen now in Corner Brook at the Humberside Rail Museum, where Brendan Dix, a former engineer, is the curator.
We have the only steam engine that's available on the island. It's inoperative, but it's the only steam engine left alive. And we have the only working diesel-electric locomotive, which is a 1,200 horsepower General Motors diesel-electric.
The dining car is still set for lunch, and the sleeping berth looks as if someone bunked there last night. When the last train stopped here at the railroad town of Humbermouth, all the railroad employees stood beside the tracks to watch the passing of the railway in Newfoundland. Nowadays, a train journey across Canada starts in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the eastern seaport, where so many immigrants first set foot. They disembarked at Pier 21, which is now a museum and a testament to the immigrant experience.
People would be unloaded into this room here, and also they would be processed, welcomed into Canada, and then at the end of that process, we could take, anywhere from 2 hours to 8 hours in length, depending on the number of people on the ship and so on. You would get your supplies for the train ride across Canada.
Immigrants arriving in the 1930s would still face a long overland journey to Saskatchewan and Alberta. At Pier 21, you can cross Canada in minutes.
Well, the train exhibit offers people a glimpse into what it may have been like for immigrants who would have gone onto the train. It's a 10-minute train ride across Canada. Starts in Halifax, ends in Vancouver.
Immigrants weren't the only ones facing an uncertain future.
It was also very important with World War II because all of the troops left Canada from Pier 21 to fight overseas in Europe. They all came by train.
You can still stay at the original train hotel, although it's undergone a few renovations, additions, and name changes since it was built in 1930.
The lobby has changed a bit, but it's still very reminiscent of the original hotel. And if you go into our Promenade Lounge, the ceiling work with all of the copper leafing and such is still the same, and it's fabulous.
Passengers often overnight here before boarding the Ocean, the longest running passenger train in Canadian history. In the heady days of immigration, the Ocean traveled all the way across Canada. Passengers get on the train at Halifax Station, and once on board, you're en route through Nova Scotia to New Brunswick. At the mouth of the Petitcodiac River in New Brunswick, these small islands only appear at high tide. Over the millennia, the 15-meter tides that surge up the Bay of Fundy have sculpted the soft rock into what look like flower pots atop reddish pillars in the Rocks Provincial Park.
Fundy is hill country. Hills going up to 366 meters or 1,200 feet above sea level. So all of Fundy is rugged topography, steep hills, deep river valleys, fast-flowing rivers, waterfalls, all going down to the Bay of Fundy shoreline.
Mary's Point Shorebird Reserve puts on a kind of air show. Birds on their annual migrations swoop through in amazing flying formations.
When they have completed their nesting in the Arctic, then they pass through here in hundreds of thousands. We call them sandpipers, but there are about 10 different species of those birds. They stop for about 10 days, and they feed, and they get fat, and they fuel up, because then from here, right from this point, they fly from 40 to 60 hours non-stop to South America.
Listening to the birds, it's easy to understand how the nearby Tantramar marshes got their names, from the French Tantamar, meaning uproar. These marshes, called the world's biggest hayfield, are protected from the sea by dikes built by 17th century Acadian settlers.
Tantramar was settled as early as 1672 by a gentleman named Jacques Bourgeois, who came with 5 families, and the Acadian population of this area grew until the deportation in 1755.
Here at Fort Beauséjour, you can appreciate the tremendous isolation under which the Acadians lived. Caught between the ongoing British and French wars, the Acadians refused to take sides, but the British, not convinced of their neutrality, deported them. The majority ended up in the French colony of Louisiana, where they became known as Cajuns. They say Prince Edward Island is no longer an island, ever since the Confederation Bridge was thrown across the Northumberland Straits. Like Newfoundland, only the railway right-of-way remains. 275 kilometers of track that once linked North Cape with East Point has now been converted into the Confederation Trail. The trail is aptly named, for it was here in Charlottetown, the capital of Canada's smallest and most densely populated province, that Confederation was conceived. The idea of joining the colonies of British North America was tied to the dream of building a transcontinental railroad. This would be key to the future, vital for trade and Western settlement, and crucial in the defense against a growing threat from the Americans. In 1864, Upper and Lower Canada learned that the Atlantic provinces might form their own union. So a delegation boarded the Queen Victoria, along with $13,000 worth of champagne, and set sail for Prince Edward Island, to be met by a single oyster boat. It seems their arrival was eclipsed by the first ever visit of the circus. In spite of their low-key welcome, the Ottawa delegation persevered, and the banns of matrimony were proclaimed. 3 years later, a nation was born. From nation building in Charlottetown to a national park on the north side of the province. Here, some of North America's finest white sand beaches fringe the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The park is renowned for its great dune lands, salt marshes, and freshwater ponds. Within its boundaries can be found Green Gables, the farmhouse immortalized by Lucy Maud Montgomery.
Her mother died when she was 22 months old, and then from there she was taken down to her Cavendish home and raised by her grandparents, the McNeils, down in Cavendish.
And what I always argue that she had to have that loneliness in Cavendish to write. And people have said they'd see her at 3 or 4 in the morning roaming the fields. I suppose she was getting books put together characters, thought out.
Well, I think Anne, as Lucy Maud says herself, is her imagination, based on certain real things that happened to her in her life. But Anne is a creation of Lucy Maud Montgomery's mind.
Prince Edward Island is really a beautiful province, the most beautiful place in America, I believe. Elsewhere are more lavish landscapes and grander scenery, but for chaste, restful loveliness, it is unsurpassed. Compassed by the inviolate sea, it floats on the waves of the Blue Gulf, a green seclusion and haunt of ancient peace.
Returning to New Brunswick, we rejoin the ocean train at Moncton and head for Couchibouguac National Park.
There's so much within the province of New Brunswick. Certainly the southeast coast of New Brunswick, which has the beaches and shorelines and the natural habitats, which have gone relatively undiscovered for many, many years. And the reason Couchibouguac National Park was established to preserve that part of Canada's heritage, the Barrier Island system. It's basically a nursery for many of the fish and small organisms that live along this coast, and many of the birds and seals and other organisms feed on. The dunes are a very fragile system, and it's maintained by marram grass.
The dunes also provide an ideal nesting area for the terns.
So the natives people, the First Nations, fished in these waters, and they camped along these coasts. And they traveled and transported goods and supplies inland through the river systems. And then later came the Acadians, who settled along the coast.
The history of the Acadians is on display at Le Pays de la Saguine, an interpretive center and showcase for the literary works of Antonine Maillet.
Et glangan du docteur Chase pour toutes les maladies de la peau. Venez, j'en ai pour tous les goûts. Et du sirop Lambert pour les coups de haleine, les poumoniques et les consumptions. Tout ce qu'il faut pour les crochus, les tordus, les morveux, les esclopés.
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez, mes petits cochons? Je gage que vous aimeriez ça avoir du pays, hein? Hey! Ça vous tenterait pas de prendre de large un beau matin pour les mers du Sud?
They created Le Pays de la Saguine, a theme park to underline the works of Antonine Maillet, which is an international Acadian author. Antonine Maillet is a woman that's solidly connected to her roots, Acadian roots.
You don't erase history, but I've always felt that being part of that ethnic group, you know, was good for me, and I have always been proud of it. And I've always appreciated the efforts that our great-great-great-parents made to survive.